The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the small room where I lay curled on my side, the ache in my stomach finally dulled to a bearable throb. 3 days I'd been here in this quiet Ohio town of Willow Creek, enduring tests, injections, and the cold indifference of nurses who moved like ghosts through the halls. The pain had started as a sharp twist, like a knife carving through my gut, and it took every ounce of my strength to drag myself to the emergency room. Alone. My husband Jack Thompson hadn't shown up once, not for a visit, a call, or even a text to check if I was still breathing. Instead, he was across town, wiping tears from the eyes of his childhood friend Sarah Mitchell, who'd been spiraling since her divorce from a Columbus lawyer. Sarah, with her fragile smiles and practiced vulnerability, always had a way of pulling Jack into her orbit, leaving me to fend for myself. I'd paid every hospital bill with the last of my savings, shuffled through paperwork, and arranged for a cab to take me home, all while Jack played the hero in Sarah's story. It wasn't new, his absence and priorities, but something shifted inside me this time. As I sat in that hospital bed staring at the cracked ceiling tiles, a strange clarity washed over me like a memory from another life. I'd lived this before, hadn't I? A life where I gave everything to Jack, my youth, my dreams, my pride, only to be cast aside for a woman he'd always loved more. These weren't just fleeting thoughts. They were vivid, like scenes from a movie I'd starred in but forgotten. A past life, I called it, though I didn't know how else to explain it. It started after I blacked out in the ER, my heart racing as the doctors stabilized me. In that haze, I saw it all, years of waiting for Jack to love me, betrayal, and losing myself. But this time I was awake. This time I'd choose differently. Back home, the small clapboard house we rented on Maple Street felt colder than usual, the air heavy with neglect. The bed was unmade, a few shirts strewn across the couch from when I'd rushed to the hospital. I stood in the living room staring at the mess and started packing my clothes into an old duffel bag. Not to wash them like I'd tell Jack, but to leave. The front door creaked open and Jack stepped inside, his broad shoulders filling the frame. His brown eyes scanned the room, usually warm but now sharp with irritation. "You've been gone 3 days, Emily," he said, his voice clipped. "And the house is a wreck. Couldn't you at least tidy up?" The words stung, but they didn't surprise me. That was Jack, quick to find fault, slow to care. I'd have apologized and scrambled to please him in my past life. Not anymore. I met his gaze, my hand still folding a sweater. "I just got out of the hospital," I said, my voice flat, stripped of the pleading tone I'd once used. His expression faltered, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. He paused, then stepped closer, his voice softening. "How are you feeling, Em?" The question caught me off guard, not because he asked, but because I knew he didn't mean it. In that other life, I'd clung to these rare moments of kindness, mistaking them for love. Now I saw them for what they were, crumbs tossed to keep me tethered. "I'm okay," I replied, not looking at him, my hands moving faster to pack the bag. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls were closing on the life I'd outgrown. I zipped the duffel and slung it over my shoulder, my heart steady despite the ache in my chest. Jack's eyes followed me, confusion knitting his brow. "Where are you going with that?" he asked, stepping closer. I didn't answer. I just moved toward the storage closet to stow the bag. I wasn't ready to leave until I had a plan. But I knew I would soon. As I turned back, Jack was still standing there, his hands shoved in his pockets, watching me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "You know," he said, his tone lighter, "we could grab dinner tonight, just you and me. Let's talk things over." I almost laughed. Talk things over. I'd have jumped at the chance in my past life, believing it meant he cared. Now I saw the manipulation, the way he dangled affection to keep me in line. I shook my head. "I've got things to do, Jack." That night I sat on the couch, a notebook in my lap, mapping out my escape. Willow Creek was a dead end, a town of fading textile factories and broken dreams. But I remembered something from that other life. Austin, Texas was about to boom in the 1980s with tech companies sprouting like wildflowers. My past life memories showed me the decline of textiles and the rise of electronics, computers, TVs, and appliances. I had $15,000 saved from years of pinching pennies at the factory. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. I opened my laptop, an old clunker I'd bought secondhand, and searched for bus tickets to Austin. The screen glowed with possibility, a lifeline to a future I could control. Before I clicked purchase, I glanced at the YouTube tab still open from earlier, where I'd been watching stories of women who'd rebuilt their lives. The video was paused on a smiling creator, her voice warm and encouraging. If this story resonates with you, she'd said, hit that like button, comment about your journey, and subscribe to join our community of dreamers and doers. Your support keeps these stories alive. I smiled faintly, feeling a kinship with her. One day I'll share my story too. For now, I clicked the ticket button, my finger steady. Willow Creek was my past, Austin was my future. The next morning, I walked to the bus station, the weight of my decision settling like a warm blanket. Jack was at the school where he taught history, probably charming his students with that easy smile I'd once loved. I didn't tell him I was leaving. He'd find out soon enough. As I passed the local diner, the smell of coffee and bacon wafting through the air, I thought of the first time I'd met Jack on a blind date arranged by a coworker. He'd been awkward, fumbling with his words, buying me cotton candy at the county fair. His nervousness had charmed me, made me think he was different. But in my past life, I'd learned the truth. He'd been chasing Sarah even then, sneaking to Columbus to see her, using me as a fallback. This time, I wouldn't wait for him to choose me. I'd pick myself. The next evening, Jack came home late, his tie loosened and his hair mussed from a long day. I was in the bedroom packing another bag this time, with purpose, though I still hid it behind a lie. The house was quieter now, the mess from before tidied up, not because I cared what Jack thought, but because I needed order to think clearly. My past life memories were sharper now, like a lens coming into focus. I saw the years I'd wasted begging for Jack's love, swallowing my pride when he chose Sarah over me. I saw the textile factories decline, the layoffs that would hit Willow Creek by 1987, and the tech boom transforming Austin into a hub of opportunity. These visions weren't just dreams, but a roadmap guiding me to a life I could build on my terms. Jack leaned against the doorway, watching me fold a pair of jeans into the duffel. "Why are you packing our clothes again?" he asked, his casual voice edged with suspicion. I didn't look up. "To wash them," I said, clutching the bag to my chest, my face a mask of indifference. He nodded slowly, unconvinced, but didn't press. Instead, he stepped closer, holding a small gift bag you'd find at a boutique in Columbus. "I got something for you," he said, his smile tentative, almost boyish. "Come here." I hesitated, my stomach twisting not from pain this time, but from the weight of memory. In my past life, I'd craved moments like this, rare glimpses of Jack's affection that kept me tethered to him. Now I saw them for what they were, distractions that kept me from noticing his heart was elsewhere. I walked over my steps, deliberate, and he pulled out a bridal veil, delicate lace with tiny pearls stitched along the edges. He said I was at Sarah's wedding last month, his voice softening. The bride wore one like this, and I thought, "Emily, you'd look beautiful in it." He placed it on my head, adjusting it gently, his fingers brushing my hair. He turned me toward the mirror, his reflection smiling behind me. I stared at myself, the veil framing my face like a ghost of a dream. In my past life, I'd waited years for Jack to propose a real wedding, not the rushed courthouse ceremony we'd had because his parents pushed for it. I'd imagined him looking at me like he looked at Sarah with devotion that lit up his eyes. But that dream never came true. Now standing here, I felt nothing but a dull ache, a bitterness that had hardened into resolve. I said I don't like it, removing the veil and setting it on the dresser. My voice was steady, devoid of the emotion I'd once poured into him. Jack's smile vanished, his face darkening with a flash of anger. "Fine," he snapped, snatching the veil and shoving it back into the bag. "Keep it or don't. I don't care." In my past life, his anger would have sent me scrambling to apologize, to smooth things over. Now I just turned back to my packing, my silence louder than any words. He stood there, fists clenched, then stormed out the door, slamming behind him. The rickety wooden frame rattled, echoing the fragility of our life together. Alone again, I sat on the bed, the duffel bag beside me. I opened my notebook where I'd scribbled plans for Austin. The textile factory where I worked, Willow Creek Textiles, was one of the last in the region, struggling against cheaper imports and automation. My past life memories showed it closing within 5 years, leaving hundreds jobless. But Austin was different. Tech companies like Dell and IBM were starting to take root, and my $15,000 could buy a foothold, a food truck maybe, or a small stake in an electronics shop. I'd learned from that other life textiles were dying, but electronics, computers, TVs, appliances were the future. I could start small, learn fast, and build something real. The next day, I walked to the factory, my nomination for the Outstanding Worker Award weighing on my mind. It wasn't just a title, it came with a $1,000 bonus and a chance at a better shift, maybe even a promotion. I'd earned it logging overtime, fixing looms when others gave up. But Jack's voice echoed in my head from a conversation the night before he'd left for Columbus again. Sarah's on the nomination list too, he'd said, his tone coaxing. She's had a rough year, Em. You could give her your spot. It'd mean a lot to her. I'd stared at him, my past life memories flashing Sarah getting the award, Jack's smug smile as I congratulated her, my heart breaking in silence. I earned it. I'd told him, my voice firm. He'd frowned, muttering about my selfishness, but I didn't budge. At the factory, I overheard coworkers whispering about Sarah's divorce and how Jack had been seen with her in Columbus helping her move into a new apartment. The gossip stung, but it also clarified things. Sarah wasn't just a friend, she was why Jack's heart was never mine. I thought back to our early days when we'd walked through the county fair, his hand nervous in mine. I'd thought it was love, but now I saw it for what it was, convenience. He'd married me because I was there, not because he wanted me. In Austin, I'd be free of that lie. As I left the factory, the Ohio sky was gray heavy with the promise of rain. I stopped by the bus station to confirm my ticket to Austin, which is set for 5 days from now. I wasn't running away, I was running toward something. My past life had shown me what happened if I stayed a lifetime of waiting, of shrinking myself to fit Jack's indifference. This time, I'd write a different ending. I'd heal not by forgiving him, but by building a life where he didn't matter. The air in Willow Creek Textiles was thick with the hum of looms and the faint smell of machine oil, a familiar rhythm that had anchored my days for years. I stood at my station, adjusting a thread that had snarled in the warp, my fingers moving with the precision of someone who'd earned her place. The Outstanding Worker Award was mine to lose, a $1,000 bonus, a better shift, a rare chance to climb out of the grind that defined life in this fading Ohio town. I'd poured everything into this job, staying late, fixing machines others abandoned, all while Jack Thompson, my husband, spent evenings in Columbus with Sarah Mitchell, his childhood friend, who'd always held his heart. But that morning as I worked, a knot of dread tightened in my chest. Jack had been pushing me to give up the nomination for Sarah, claiming her divorce left her desperate for the stability it offered. I'd refused, my voice steady with a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I earned it, I'd told him, and for the first time I saw his frustration crack into something like fear. My past life memories, vivid since my hospital blackout, warned me of what was coming. Jack had sabotaged my nomination in that other life, handing it to Sarah while I smiled through the pain, pretending it didn't matter. I'd lived decades in that shadow, shrinking myself to fit his indifference, believing love meant sacrifice. But now I saw the truth. Love didn't demand my erasure. These memories weren't just echoes. They were a gift, a second chance born from that moment in the ER, when my heart nearly gave out and I saw the life I'd wasted. I wasn't staying in Willow Creek to repeat it. My bus ticket to Austin, Texas, was tucked in my purse, set for 5 days from now. I'd chosen Austin because my visions showed it thriving in the 1980s tech boom, while Willow Creek's textile factories crumbled under cheap imports and automation. I had $15,000 saved, enough to start small, maybe a food truck or a stake in an electronics shop. But first, I had to protect what I'd earned. At noon, the factory whistle blew, signaling a break. I was wiping my hands on a rag when Jack appeared, his tall frame casting a shadow over my workbench. Sarah stood behind him, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes red-rimmed but sharp with intent. "Emily, we need to talk," Jack said, his voice low, like he was trying to keep things civil. I followed them to the supervisor's office, where Mr. Wilson sat behind a cluttered desk, his glasses perched on his nose. The room was cramped with stacks of payroll records and a faded union poster on the wall. Mr. Wilson looked up, his expression neutral but kind. He'd always respected my work, once calling me the backbone of the second shift. Now he leaned back, waiting. Jack didn't waste time. He said that Emily agreed to give up her nomination for the Outstanding Worker Award, and his tone was matter-of-fact, as if my sacrifice was a done deal. "Sarah needs it more. She's starting over after her divorce." Sarah nodded, her lips trembling in a way that felt rehearsed. I stared at Jack, my heart pounding not with fear but with a cold clarity. In my past life, I'd let him bully me into this, believing his lies about fairness. Not this time. "I never agreed to that," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. Mr. Wilson raised an eyebrow, glancing between us. Jack's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Come on, Em, don't be selfish. Sarah's been through hell. You've got a stable life with me." "Stable." The word was a slap. Stable meant a marriage without love, a house filled with silence nights waiting for a man who was always elsewhere. I opened my mouth to respond, but Jack leaned forward, his voice dropping to a hiss. You want to talk about stability? Fine. Emily and I aren't legally married. She was raised as a child bride and sold to an older man in West Virginia. Her registration's still tied to him. The words landed like a bomb, shattering the air. Mr. Wilson's pen froze midair. Sarah's lips curled into a faint, triumphant smile. My past, my childhood of neglect, abuse, the suffocating weight of being sold at 13 to a man who could barely walk was my most profound shame. I told Jack in a moment of trust, believing he'd guard it. Now he'd weaponized it, exposing me to strangers to win a prize for Sarah. The room spun my chest tight with rage and betrayal. I'd crumbled here in my past life, letting Jack's betrayal define me. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced them back, standing taller. Give the title to Sarah, I said, my voice cracking but firm. Jack and I are done. The words felt like a release, like shedding a skin that had never fit. Sarah's smile widened, but Mr. Wilson's face softened with concern. Emily, are you sure? He asked. I nodded, my gaze locked on Jack, whose eyes flickered with something, guilt maybe, or surprise. It didn't matter. I turned and walked out, the factory's hum fading behind me. Outside, the Ohio wind bit at my skin, but I felt lighter, as if I'd left more than a job behind. I was leaving Jack and the life that had tried to break me. The Willow Creek bus station was a squat brick building, its benches chipped and stained, a timetable flickering on a digital board. I sat there the next morning, my duffel bag at my feet, the $15,000 in my savings account burning a hole in my mind. My ticket to Austin was for tomorrow, but I needed to feel the weight of my decision to sit between who I'd been and who I was becoming. The station smelled of diesel and stale coffee, and outside the town moved slowly pickup trucks rumbling down Main Street, factory workers grabbing lunch at the diner. Willow Creek was dying, and its textile mills were no match for the global shift to cheaper labor. Sharp as glass, my past life memories showed me the layoffs coming in 1987, the shuttered factories and the families left scrambling. But they also showed me Austin, a city on the cusp of a tech revolution where companies like Dell would turn dreams into empires. I'd start small, a food truck, maybe selling breakfast tacos to tech workers, but I'd build something real, something mine. Those memories weren't just visions. They were a lifeline. They'd started in the hospital when my heart monitor flatlined for a moment, and I'd seen my life, not this one, but another, where I stayed with Jack, chasing his love until it hollowed me out. I saw myself at 40, graying early, my hands calloused from factory work, my heart broken by Jack's endless devotion to Sarah. I saw the day he admitted he'd never loved me, that I was a duty, not a choice. The pain of that life was so vivid it felt like my own, and when I woke in the ER gasping, I knew it was a warning. I wasn't religious, didn't believe in reincarnation, but I couldn't deny the clarity these memories brought. They showed me markets, trends, and opportunities, like the rise of electronics, computers, and TVs, that would define the next decade. They showed me my strength, buried under years of trying to please a man who didn't care. I thought back to Jack's betrayal in Mr. Wilson's office, his voice cold as he exposed my past. The shame of being a child bride sold to a man 30 years older had haunted me since I was 13. I'd escaped at 16, running to Ohio with nothing but a backpack and a bus ticket, believing I could start over. Jack had been my first taste of kindness, or so I thought. We met on a blind date at the county fair, his awkward charm disarming me. He'd bought me cotton candy, his fingers trembling as he handed it over, and when he grabbed my hand, his heartbeat was so loud I could hear it. I'm not good at this, he'd said, blushing. But I like you, Emily. I'd fallen for it, mistaking his attention for love. In my past life, I'd learned too late that he was sneaking to Columbus to see Sarah, his high school crush, even then. I was his fallback, the safe choice, while chasing the one he wanted. Sitting in the bus station, I felt the weight of that truth lift. I didn't need Jack's approval or his love, I needed myself. My plan was simple: get to Austin, rent a cheap apartment, and start a food truck. My past life memories showed me the city's growth, tech, startups, young professionals, a hunger for quick, affordable food. Breakfast tacos were cheap, and I could sell them outside office parks. With my savings, I could buy a used truck, get permits, and learn the business. If I saved enough, I'd invest in electronics, maybe a small shop selling computer parts. The memories were clear. By 1990, Austin would be a hub for tech, and I'd be ready. I stood slinging my bag over my shoulder and walked to the diner across the street. The bell jingled as I entered, and I slid into a booth ordering a coffee. The waitress, a woman named Linda who'd known me since I moved here, smiled warmly. "You look different, Emily," she said, pouring the coffee. "Lighter, somehow." I nodded, sipping the bitter brew. "I'm leaving," I said. Her eyes widened, but she didn't ask questions, just squeezed my shoulder before moving on. I opened my notebook, sketching out numbers, truck costs, food supplies, rent in Austin. The math was tight, but it worked. For the first time, I felt a spark of excitement, like the girl I'd been before Jack, before the factory, before the weight of a life that wasn't mine. That night I walked home under a starless sky, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Jack was in Columbus again, probably with Sarah, and the house was empty. I didn't care. I packed the last essentials, hiding the bag in the closet. Tomorrow I'd face the factory one previous time, claim what was mine, and leave Willow Creek behind. My past life had shown me what happened if I stayed a slow death of the soul. This time I'd choose life mine on my terms in a city that promised more than regret. The Willow Creek Textiles factory buzzed with its usual rhythm looms, clattering workers shouting over the din, the air thick with lint and the faint metal tang. I stood at my station, my hands steady as I threaded a new bobbin, but my mind was elsewhere. Tomorrow I'd board a bus to Austin, Texas with $15,000 in savings and a plan to start over. My past life memories, vivid since that hospital blackout, had shown me the futility of staying in Willow Creek. The factory would close by 1987, crushed by cheap imports, leaving hundreds jobless. But they also showed me Austin's tech boom, computers, TVs, a city pulsing with opportunity. I'd start with a food truck selling breakfast tacos to tech workers, then invest in electronics. Today, though, I had one last fight, the Outstanding Worker Award. It was mine, earned through years of overtime and grit, and I wouldn't let Jack Thompson, my so-called husband, steal it for Sarah Mitchell. Jack had betrayed me 2 days ago, demanding I give up the nomination for Sarah, his childhood friend who'd always held his heart. When I refused, he'd stormed off to Columbus, leaving our small clapboard house on Maple Street colder than ever. My past life visions showed me how this played out. Before Jack sabotaged my nomination, Sarah got the award, and I swallowed my pain to keep the peace. Not this time. Those memories born from a moment in the ER when my heart faltered were a warning. They showed me a life wasted chasing Jack's love, a marriage built on obligation, not affection. I'd told him my darkest secret, that I'd been raised as a child, bride sold at 13 to a man in West Virginia because I thought he'd protect it. I was wrong. At noon, Mr. Wilson, the factory supervisor, called me to his office. The room was cramped with faded union posters and stacks of yellowed invoices. Jack was there, his broad shoulders tense, his brown eyes avoiding mine. Sarah stood beside him, her blonde hair pulled back, her face pale but her eyes sharp with intent. Mr. Wilson adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. "Emily, Jack says you agreed to give up the Outstanding Worker nomination for Sarah. Is that true?" he asked, his voice steady but kind. He'd always respected my work, once saying I was the best mechanic on the floor. I shook my head. "No, sir. I never agreed to that." Jack's jaw tightened, his voice low and urgent. "Come on, Em, don't do this. Sarah's starting over after her divorce. She needs the bonus, the better shift. You've got me a stable life." "Stable!" The word was a knife twisting in my gut. Stable meant nights alone, waiting for a man who spent his time with another woman. I met his gaze, my voice calm but firm. "I earned that award, Jack. It's mine." Sarah's lips trembled, a practiced fragility, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. She stepped closer to Jack, her hand brushing his arm, and I knew what was coming. Jack leaned forward, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You want to talk about stability?" "Fine. Emily and I aren't legally married. She was a child bride sold to an older man in West Virginia. Her registration's still tied to him." The words hit like a thunderclap, echoing in the small office. Mr. Wilson's pen froze, his eyes widening. Sarah's mouth curved into a faint, triumphant smile. My past, my childhood of neglect, abuse, the suffocating terror of being sold to a paralyzed man 30 years older, was my most profound shame. I'd escaped at 16, fleeing to Ohio to start over, and told Jack in a moment of trust, believing he'd guard it. Now he'd thrown it to the wolves to win a prize for Sarah. The room spun, my chest tight with rage and humiliation. I'd crumbled here in my past life, letting Jack's betrayal define me. I'd smiled through the pain, pretending it didn't hurt. Not now. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced them back, standing taller. "Give the award to Sarah," I said, my voice cracking but resolute. Jack and I are done." The words were a release, like cutting a rope that had tethered me to a sinking ship. Sarah's smile widened, but Mr. Wilson's face softened with concern. "Emily, are you sure?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, my gaze locked on Jack. His eyes flickered guilt, maybe, or shock, but it was too late. I turned and walked out, the factory's hum fading behind me. Outside, the Ohio air was crisp, the sky heavy with gray clouds. I walked to the bus station, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, and my ticket to Austin was a promise in my pocket. The betrayal stung, but it also freed me. Jack had shown me who he was, and I was done pretending he could change. My past life had taught me that staying meant losing myself. This time I'd choose differently. I'd build a life where no one could hurt me again. The bus to Austin smelled of worn leather and faint diesel, its engine rumbling as it pulled out of Willow Creek at dawn. I sat by the window, my duffel bag at my feet, watching the Ohio fields blur into streaks of green and gold. My $15,000 savings tucked in a bank book in my purse was all I had, years of scrimping from factory wages, every penny earned through sweat and sacrifice. Jack hadn't come home last night, likely still in Columbus with Sarah, and I hadn't left a note. He'd figure it out when he saw the empty closet. My past life memories, sharp as ever, showed me what happened if I stayed a life of waiting, of shrinking, to fit Jack's indifference, of losing myself to a man who loved another. Those visions, born from that hospital blackout, when my heart nearly stopped, were my guide. They showed me Austin's future tech startups, bustling office parks, a city where I could start small and grow big. I leaned my head against the glass, the cool surface grounding me. In that other life, I'd met Jack on a blind date at the county fair, his awkward charm disarming me. He'd bought me cotton candy, his fingers trembling as he handed it over, and when he grabbed my hand, his heartbeat was loud enough to hear. "I'm not good at this, Emily," he'd said, blushing, "but I like you." I'd fallen for it, mistaking his attention for love. But my memories revealed the truth. Even then, he was sneaking to Columbus to see Sarah, his high school crush, using me as a fallback. I'd spent years chasing his approval, believing I could earn his heart. When Sarah got sick in that past life, Jack's guilt kept him by her side until she died, and only then did he turn to me, not out of love, but obligation. It was his duty, never his choice. As the bus crossed into Kentucky, I felt the weight of that life lift. My escape from West Virginia at 16, fleeing the man I'd been sold to his house, a prison of creaking floors and cold silence, had taught me I could survive anything. I'd told Jack that secret, believing he'd understand my resilience. Instead, he'd used it to betray me. The memory of his voice in Mr. Wilson's office, exposing my past to win Sarah's award, still burned, but it also fueled me. I wasn't running away. I was running toward something. Austin was my chance to rewrite my story, to build a life where I didn't need anyone's approval. The bus rolled into Austin at dusk, and the city's skyline was a mix of low-rise buildings and cranes, a sign of the growth my memories promised. I rented a tiny apartment in East Austin, a one-room walk-up with peeling paint, but a window overlooking a street alive with taco stands and music. My $15,000 wouldn't last forever, but it was enough for a used food truck and permits. My past life visions showed tech workers flooding the city, hungry for quick, cheap food. Simple, affordable, and scalable breakfast tacos were my way in. I spent the next day at a lot near downtown, haggling over a beat-up truck with a decent grill. The seller, a grizzled man named Ray, eyed me skeptically. "You sure you can handle this, lady?" he asked. I smiled, my resolve unshaken. I've handled worse. That night I sat on the apartment's thin mattress, a notebook open on my lap. I sketched a menu: chorizo and egg, potato and cheese, maybe a vegan option for the tech crowd. My memories showed me the factories back home collapsing, but electronics rising: computers, monitors, TVs. If the food truck worked, I'd save enough to invest in a small electronics shop, maybe partner with someone who knew the industry. Austin was buzzing with startups like Compaq and Texas Instruments, and I'd learn fast. I thought of my childhood, the years of abuse that had taught me to endure. Leaving West Virginia had been my first act of defiance. Leaving Jack was my second. Each step was a brick in the foundation of a new life. As I drifted to sleep, the city's hum outside my window felt like a heartbeat, steady and alive. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building. My past life showed me what happened when I was small. This time I'd grow not for Jack or anyone, but for me. The Austin sun beat down on East Cesar Chavez Street, where I parked my food truck, its faded red paint gleaming after a fresh scrub. The air smelled of sizzling chorizo and fresh tortillas mingling with the dust of a city under construction. It had been 2 weeks since I'd left Willow Creek, Ohio, fleeing a loveless marriage to Jack Thompson and his betrayal in exposing my past as a child bride. My $15,000 in savings had bought this truck a used beast with a decent grill, and I'd spent every day since learning to make breakfast tacos, chorizo, and egg potato and cheese, a vegan option with avocado for the tech crowd. My past life memories vivid since a near-death experience in the hospital guided me like a map. They showed Willow Creek's textile factories collapsing by 1987, crushed by global competition, while Austin's tech scene exploded with startups like Dell and Compaq. Selling tacos to hungry programmers was my first step. Investing in electronics would be my next. I was flipping tortillas when a woman approached, her dark hair tied back her eyes, carrying the same weariness I'd seen in my reflection. "Emily," she asked, her voice hesitant but warm. "I'm Rachel Carter from Willow Creek. I heard you were here." I froze, recognizing her from the factory's break room, where we'd swapped small talk over coffee. Rachel had worked the third shift, her hands as calloused as mine from years at the looms. "What are you doing in Austin?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. She smiled, a mix of nerves and resolve. "I left my husband Tom. He was like Jack. Never home, always chasing someone else. When I heard you got out, I thought I could too." We sat in the truck's shade, sharing a plate of tacos as she told her story. Rachel had married Tom at 19, pressured by her family in a town where options were scarce. He was a truck driver gone for weeks, leaving her to raise their son alone. When he was home, he was distant, spending his money on bars and other women. "I stayed because I thought it was my duty," she said, her voice cracking. "But seeing you leave Jack, it gave me courage." Her story echoed mine, a life of waiting, of shrinking to fit a man's neglect. My past life memories showed me how I'd done the same, wasting decades on Jack, while he pined for Sarah Mitchell. I squeezed Rachel's hand. "You're here now. That's what matters." I offered her a job on the spot. "Help me run the truck," I said. "We'll split the profits, save up, and build something bigger." Her eyes lit up and she nodded, a spark of hope replacing her weariness. We pooled our resources, my $10,000 left after buying the truck, her $5,000 from selling her old car, and got to work. Rachel learned fast, her warm laugh drawing customers as much as my recipes. We parked near tech office parks where programmers in polo shirts lined up for quick meals. My past life visions had been right. Austin was booming with construction cranes dotting the skyline and new companies hiring by the hundreds. We worked from dawn to dusk, the truck's grill hissing, our hands moving in sync. We sat in my tiny apartment at night, counting cash and planning. "Electronics are next," I told her, explaining my memories of the tech surge: computers, monitors, TVs. Rachel didn't question my foresight. She just nodded, trusting me. Our bond grew over late-night talks, sharing stories of Willow Creek and the men who'd failed us. Rachel told me about her son now, with her sister, and how she'd cried leaving him, but knew she had to find herself first. I shared my own pain, not just Jack's betrayal, but my childhood sold at 13 to a man in West Virginia whose house was a prison of creaking floors and cold silence. Escaping at 16 had been my first act of defiance. Leaving Jack was my second. Rachel listened, her eyes soft and understanding. "We're survivors," she said, clinking her soda can against mine. I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't known in years. For the first time, I wasn't alone. Our truck was a hit by the end of the month, netting $2,000 in profit. We saved every penny, aiming for a bigger venture. My memories showed me the textile industry's collapse and the rise of electronics, and I knew Austin was the place to be. We enrolled in a community college course on small business management, learning about permits, taxes, and supply chains. Rachel's determination matched mine, and together we dreamed of a shop selling computer parts or TVs. As I locked the truck one night, the Austin skyline glowing under a starlit sky, I felt something new: pride, not in pleasing someone else, but in what I was building. My past life had shown me a woman broken by love. This life would show me a woman rebuilt by her strength. The phone call came on a humid Austin morning, the air thick with the promise of rain. I was prepping the food truck, chopping onions, while Rachel stirred a pot of beans, when my ancient flip phone buzzed. It was Mr. Wilson, the supervisor from Willow Creek Textiles, his voice crackling through the line. "He said that we need you back for a meeting about the Outstanding Worker Award. Can you come?" I hesitated, my knife pausing mid-chop. The award, a $1,000 bonus, and a better shift was mine by right, earned through years of fixing looms and working overtime. But Jack's betrayal, exposing my past as a child bride to win the award for Sarah, had made me walk away. My past life memories, vivid since my hospital blackout, showed me how I'd lost it before smiling through the pain to keep Jack happy. Not this time. I'll be there, I said, my voice steady. Rachel looked up, concern in her eyes. You sure, she asked? I nodded. I need to close that chapter. I took a Greyhound back to Willow Creek, the familiar Ohio field, stirring a mix of nostalgia and dread. The factory was the same grimy windows, the hum of looms, but it felt smaller, like a place I'd outgrown. Mr. Wilson's office was crowded when I arrived. Jack stood by the window, his face drawn. Sarah clinging to his arm, her eyes red and puffy. Mr. Wilson sat behind his desk, his glasses reflecting the fluorescent light. Emily, he said, his tone warm but firm, we've reviewed the nominations. Your work, your output, your reliability was undeniable. The Outstanding Worker Award is yours. He slid a medal and an envelope across the desk, the $1,000 bonus inside. Sarah let out a sob, burying her face in Jack's shoulder. It's not fair, she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Jack's eyes met mine, flickering with guilt, maybe regret. I'd have softened in my past life, given him what he wanted to avoid a fight. Now I felt nothing but resolve. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, I said, taking the medal. Its weight was solid, a reminder of what I'd earned. Sarah's sobs grew louder, but Mr. Wilson's gaze stayed on me. There's more, he said. You've been offered a promotion, lead mechanic, better pay. Will you stay? I glanced at Jack, his jaw tight, Sarah still clinging to him. My past life memories showed me staying, taking the promotion, hoping Jack would see my worth. It never happened. He'd always chosen Sarah, leaving me to pick up the pieces. No, I said, my voice clear. I'm resigning. I've started a new life in Austin. Mr. Wilson's eyebrows rose, but he nodded with respect. I understand. We'll process it today. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing, but I didn't care. I turned to leave the medal in my pocket, my heart lighter. Outside, Jack caught up with me, his voice low. Emily, wait. I'm sorry about what I said there and about your past. I was desperate to help Sarah. I stopped facing him. His face was the same one I'd loved, brown eyes, sharp jaw, but it meant nothing now. You exposed my shame for her, I said, my voice cold. We're done, Jack. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his face. We can fix this, he said, stepping closer. I stepped back, widening the distance. There's nothing to fix. I'm free. I walked away, the factory's shadow fading behind me. Back in Austin, I showed Rachel the medal, its bronze surface catching the light in our cramped apartment. You did it, she said, grinning. You took what was yours. I nodded, feeling a crack in the armor I'd built around my heart. My childhood, sold to a man who saw me as property, had taught me to hide my pain. Jack's betrayal had deepened that wound. But standing here with Rachel, with the medal I'd earned, I felt the first stirrings of healing, not through forgiveness, but through reclaiming my worth. We celebrated with sodas and clinking cans under the Austin stars. My past life had shown me a woman broken by betrayal. This life showed me a woman who could rebuild stronger than before. The Austin sun rose over East Cesar Chavez Street, painting the food truck's red hull in shades of gold. It had been 3 months since I'd left Willow Creek, Ohio, escaping a loveless marriage to Jack Thompson and his betrayal in exposing my past as a child bride. My partner, Rachel Carter, and I had turned our breakfast taco truck into a local favorite, serving tech workers who lined up daily for our chorizo and egg or avocado and bean tacos. My past life memories, vivid since a near-death experience in the hospital, had guided me here. They showed Willow Creek's textile factories collapsing by 1987, buried under global competition, while Austin's tech scene exploded with startups like Dell and Texas Instruments. Our truck was netting $3,000 a month, and we'd saved $12,000, enough to dream bigger. Those memories weren't just visions. They were a roadmap showing me the rise of electronics, computers, monitors, TVs, and a chance to build something lasting. Rachel and I sat in our cramped apartment one evening, counting cash on a rickety table. Her dark hair was pulled back, her face glowing with a confidence I hadn't seen when we'd met. She'd left her own broken marriage in Willow Creek, escaping a husband who'd ignored her for years, leaving her to raise their son alone. I used to think I'd never get out, she'd told me once, her voice soft. Tom was always on the road, spending his paychecks on bars and other women. I stayed for my boy, but I was dying inside. Her story mirrored mine, years of waiting for men who didn't care, and our shared pain forged a stronger bond than family. Now she grinned, stacking bills. We're doing this, Emily. What's next? I pulled out my notebook filled with sketches and numbers. Electronics, I said. My memories show the textile industry dying, but tech computers, TVs is the future. Austin's the place to start. Rachel nodded, trusting my foresight without question. We'd heard about a small electronics workshop on the edge of town owned by Mr. Chen, a soft-spoken engineer planning to retire. His shop built computer monitors, a growing market as tech firms expanded. In the workshop, we met him the next day, a cluttered space of circuit boards and soldering irons humming with potential. I'm moving back to Houston, Mr. Chen said, his eyes tired but kind. This place is my life's work, but I can't run it anymore. I saw an opportunity. What if we invest? I asked. You stay on for production and handle the tech side. We'll manage sales and growth, Rachel chimed in, her voice steady. We're quick learners, Mr. Chen. We've built a food truck from nothing. He studied us, then nodded. All right. $10,000 buys you a 40% stake. I'll teach you what I know. We shook hands, our savings dwindling, but our future expanding. To prepare, we enrolled in a community college course on electronics manufacturing, learning about circuits, quality control, and supply chains. Rachel took to it like she'd been born for it, her hands steady as she practiced soldering. I never thought I'd do anything but factory work, she said one night, laughing. Feels like I'm waking up. Our first batch of monitors, sleek 14-inch screens for office computers, sold out in a week. We targeted rural Texas towns where stores couldn't get enough tech to meet demand. My past life memories had shown me the markup monitors sold for $250 in Austin, but fetched $400 in places like Waco or Abilene. We rented a van, drove a shipment south, and cleared $10,000 profit in one trip. Back in Austin, we celebrated with takeout pizza sprawled on my apartment floor. Rachel raised her soda can. To us, she said. I clinked mine against hers, feeling a warmth I hadn't known since childhood. My past, the abuse, the sale to a man who saw me as property, had taught me to guard my heart. But with Rachel, I was learning to open it, not to a man, but to a friend, a partner, a future. The truck still ran, but we hired a part-time cook to keep it going while we focused on the workshop. Each sale and lesson was a step toward healing, not just from Jack's betrayal, but from the years I'd spent believing I was worth only what others gave me. As I locked the workshop one night, the Austin skyline glittering, I felt a quiet pride. My past life had shown me a woman diminished by love. This life showed me a woman rebuilt by her own hands. The Austin workshop was alive with the hum of machinery, the air sharp with the scent of solder and metal. 6 months had passed since I'd left Willow Creek, and Rachel and I were no longer just food truck operators. We were shareholders in an electronics venture building computer monitors for a market hungry for tech. Our first big sale had netted $10,000, and we were planning another run to rural Texas, where demand outstripped supply. My past life memories, sparked by that hospital blackout, had guided us here, showing me the collapse of Ohio's textile industry and the rise of electronics in Austin's booming tech scene. With Rachel by my side, a woman who'd escaped her broken marriage, we were building more than a business, we were building a life. As we tested a new batch of monitors one morning, Rachel got a letter from her sister in Willow Creek. She read it aloud, her voice catching. Sarah Mitchell's been fired from the factory, she said, her eyes wide. Jack reported her for bribing the judges for the Outstanding Worker Award. She's begging her husband not to divorce her. I set down my screwdriver, a mix of closure and indifference settling over me. Sarah had been Jack's obsession, the woman he'd chosen over me, even exposing my past as a child bride to win her that award. In my past life, she'd taken it, mocking me for years, stealing opportunities while I shrank to please Jack. Now her actions had caught up with her. Rachel folded the letter, her expression thoughtful. She always acted like she was better than us, she said. Back at the factory, she'd flirt with the bosses and get notable shifts. I stayed quiet because Tom said it wasn't my place to judge. Her voice hardened, and I saw the pain of her own past years, married to a man who dismissed her, leaving her to raise their son alone. I don't feel sorry for her, she added. She made her choices. I nodded, memories of Sarah's smug smile in Mr. Wilson's office still sharp. But I didn't feel joy at her downfall, only a quiet satisfaction. My focus was here in Austin, where every monitor we built was a brick in the foundation of a new life. We drove to Waco that weekend, and our van was loaded with monitors. The trip was grueling, long hours, dusty roads, but the payoff was worth it. Store owners snapped up our stock, paying $400 per unit, double Austin's price. We cleared $12,000 to hire a driver and plan a bigger shipment. Back in the workshop, Mr. Chen grinned as we counted the cash. "You two are naturals," he said. "But raw materials are getting pricier. We need to keep costs down." My past life memories had warned me of the supply chain issues as tech demand surged. "We'll sell further south," I said. "Places like Laredo, Brownsville. Higher prices, less competition." Rachel nodded, her trust in me unshakable. That night we sat in my apartment, the window open to the Austin breeze. Rachel shared more about her past, her voice soft but steady. "When I left Tom, I thought I'd lose everything, my son, my home. But working with you, I feel like I'm finding myself." I squeezed her hand, my own heart easing. My childhood sold at 13 to a man in West Virginia, trapped in a house of silence and fear, had taught me to hide my pain. Jack's betrayal, exposing that secret, had nearly broken me. But here with Rachel, I was healing not through revenge or forgiveness, but through purpose. We toasted with sodas, and the clink of cans promised more victories. As we planned our next move, buying a truck to expand our distribution, I felt a shift. Sarah's downfall was a footnote, not my story. My past life had shown me a woman crushed by others' choices. This life showed me a woman who made her own. The Austin workshop hummed with activity, the air sharp with the scent of solder and the low buzz of machinery. 9 months had passed since I'd left Willow Creek, Ohio, escaping a loveless marriage to Jack Thompson, who'd betrayed me by exposing my past as a child bride to secure an award for his childhood friend, Sarah Mitchell. Rachel Carter, my partner and fellow escapee from a broken marriage, stood beside me testing a batch of computer monitors destined for rural Texas. Our food truck still ran, but the electronics workshop was our future, fueled by my past life memories. Vivid visions from a hospital blackout that showed Willow Creek's textile factories collapsing and Austin's tech scene soaring. We'd cleared $20,000 in profits from monitor sales to buy a delivery truck and hire 2 drivers, expanding our reach to towns like Laredo and Brownsville where prices were higher. Austin's 1980s tech boom was in full swing, with startups like Compaq hiring thousands, and we were riding the wave. Rachel and I were calibrating a monitor when I noticed a figure outside the workshop window, Jack. His broad shoulders slouched, his brown hair longer and uncombed. He'd been showing up in Austin for months, leaving anonymous gifts at my apartment, a lunchbox of sandwiches, a scarf folded neatly in a plastic bag. I'd ignored him, moving to a new place, a small 50-square-meter condo I'd bought with our profits to avoid his shadow. Now he stood there holding an envelope, his eyes red-rimmed and weary. I stepped outside, the Texas heat hitting me like a wall. "What do you want, Jack?" I asked, my voice cold as the Ohio winters I'd left behind. He handed me the envelope, his fingers trembling. "It's the outstanding worker medal and the $1,000 bonus," he said, his voice raspy. "Mr. Wilson asked me to deliver it." I opened it, feeling the medal's weight, a bronze circle I'd earned at the factory. In my past life, I'd cried when Sarah took it, and Jack had given me a cheap imitation to ease his guilt. Now I felt only indifference. "I'm sorry, Emily," he continued, his head bowed. "I shouldn't have told everyone about your past. I thought I owed Sarah, she helped my family years ago. But I was wrong. I need you." His eyes searched mine, pleading for a reaction. I thought of my childhood, sold at 13 to a man in West Virginia, trapped in a house of silence and fear. I'd shared that pain with Jack, believing he'd protect it. His betrayal had cut deeper than anything, but it also freed me. My past life memories showed me decades of waiting for his love, only to be a placeholder for Sarah. "You never loved me," I said, my voice steady. "It was your duty, not your choice. I've built a life here, Jack. I don't need you." His face crumpled, a mix of shock and sorrow. "We can fix this," he stammered, stepping closer. I stepped back, widening the distance. "There's nothing to fix. Go home." Rachel joined me outside, her dark eyes narrowing at Jack. She'd left her husband Tom, who'd ignored her for years, leaving her to raise their son alone. "He looks pathetic," she whispered, her voice tinged with pity. I nodded, but my heart was calm. Jack's regret was his burden, not mine. I was healing not through forgiving him, but through the life I was building. We returned to the workshop, where Mr. Chen was waiting, with news our latest batch of monitors had sold out, and a retailer in San Antonio wanted a contract. We celebrated that night with takeout tacos sprawled on my condo's floor. Rachel raised her soda can. To freedom, she said. I clinked mine against hers, feeling the weight of my past lift. My past life had shown me a woman broken by betrayal. This life showed me a woman whole, standing on her own. The next day, we met with Mr. Chen to plan our expansion. He suggested a night class in mechanical engineering to understand production better. He said you don't need to be experts, but know enough to spot quality. Rachel and I enrolled balancing classes with the workshop and the food truck. Each step forward sale and lesson was a stitch in the wound Jack had left. My childhood taught me to survive. This life taught me to thrive. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for our new electronics factory was a blur of confetti and cheers, the Austin skyline gleaming behind us. A year had passed since I'd left Willow Creek, Ohio, and the loveless marriage to Jack Thompson, who'd betrayed me for Sarah Mitchell. Rachel Carter and I, both survivors of men who'd valued us too little, had turned our food truck profits into a stake in a small electronics workshop, then expanded it into a full-fledged factory producing computer monitors and TVs. My past life memories, sparked by a hospital blackout, had guided us, showing the collapse of Ohio's textile industry and Austin's tech boom. We'd partnered with Mr. Chen, whose expertise kept production humming, and our sales to rural Texas towns had netted $50,000 in profits. We'd bought a delivery truck, hired drivers, and secured contracts with retailers as far as El Paso. Now, with investments from Mr. Wilson and other Willow Creek factory veterans, we'd moved to a larger site, a gleaming facility on Austin's outskirts. Mr. Wilson had flown in for the ceremony, his weathered face beaming as he shook my hand. "You've got a sixth sense, Emily," he said, chuckling. "From a factory worker to a factory owner in a year." Rachel laughed, her dark hair catching the sunlight. "She said that I wanted to escape Tom when I came to Austin. I never dreamed we'd build this." Her ex-husband, a truck driver who'd spent his life ignoring her, had faded into her past. She'd brought her son to Austin last month, enrolling him in a local school, her eyes bright with hope. Our bond had grown through late-night talks, sharing stories of survival, my childhood as a child. Bride her years, raising a child alone. Together, we'd found strength not just in business, but in healing. After the ceremony, we celebrated at a diner, the air filled with the smell of burgers and fries. I stepped outside for a breath, the Texas heat softening in the evening. Jack was leaning against a street lamp, his jacket worn, and his face haggard. He'd been in Austin for months, trailing me with apologies I ignored. "Emily," he said, his voice cracking. "I need to talk." I crossed my arms, my heart steady. "There's nothing left to say." He stepped closer, then stopped, his head low. "I've been here watching you succeed. I know I hurt you by exposing your past. I thought I loved Sarah, but it was guilt. You're the one I need." His words echoed my past life, where I'd waited decades for him to choose me, only to be a placeholder. I shook my head. "It's not just what you did, Jack. It's who you are. My memories, my past life showed me you'll always choose her. I'm done waiting." His eyes filled with tears, his shoulders trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I looked at him, once the man I'd loved, now a stranger. "I'm not," I said, turning back to the diner. Rachel met me at the door, whispering, "He's still out there." I shrugged. "He's not my problem anymore." Later, Mr. Wilson called with news he and 4 others from Willow Creek had invested $50,000 in our factory. "But there's something else," he said. "Jack gave me that money to invest in your name. He knew you'd refuse it directly." I paused, then asked him to return it to Willow Creek's laid-off workers. The factory there was struggling just as my memories predicted, and those workers had shown me kindness when I had none. It was my way of closing that chapter. Rachel and I ventured into real estate, buying Austin properties before the 1990s housing boom that my memories foresaw. Our factory paid quarterly dividends, and Mr. Wilson's team recouped their investment. Rachel and I posed at a photo studio, our smiles radiant. "I never thought I'd live like this," she said, tears in her eyes. I nodded, my own tears falling. My past, the abuse, the betrayal, had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. My past life had shown me a woman broken. This life showed me a woman free, building a future with her own hands.